The champagne flute shattered against the hardwood floor of the Marriott ballroom, and every head at the table turned toward me. "Nobody invited a loser like you here," my mother, Karen Griffin Wallace, hissed, rising from her chair so fast it toppled behind her. "Leave before I call the police." Before we continue, please hit that like button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. Now let's continue. I stood frozen, holding a wrapped gift box for my father's 60th birthday, my heels sinking into carpet that suddenly felt like quicksand. 40 guests, linen tablecloths, a 3-tier cake with Happy 60th Luke in gold script, and my mother, in a red Badgley Mishka gown, pointing a manicured finger at me like I was a stranger who'd wandered in off Peachtree Street. "Mom, I texted you I was coming. Dad invited me himself." "Your father doesn't know what he's saying half the time anymore," she snapped, glancing nervously at him. My father, Luke Griffin, sat at the head of the table looking smaller than I remembered, his hands trembling slightly around a water glass. "Robert, get security." Robert Wallace, my mother's husband of 6 years, rose like he'd been waiting for the cue. My half-sister Kayla, 19 and glowing in a dress that probably cost more than my rent, smirked into her napkin. "Karen!" My father's voice cracked through the murmuring crowd. "That's my daughter." "That's my problem," my mother shot back, "and I am handling it." I looked at 38 strangers and 2 cousins I hadn't seen in years, all staring at me like I'd committed a crime by showing up to my own father's birthday with a gift and a card that said "I love you, Daddy" in my own handwriting. I set the gift on an empty chair. "Okay," I said, my voice shaking but level. "I'll go." I didn't know yet that leaving that ballroom would be the last calm decision I made for the next 6 months. Rain hit my windshield in the parking garage before I even got the key in the ignition, and that's when I let myself cry. My name is Christina Griffin. I'm 29 years old. I manage a logistics team out of a warehouse in Marietta, Georgia, and until that night, I believed my mother merely tolerated me. I didn't know she'd built an entire second life designed to erase me from it. My parents divorced when I was 11. My father moved into a 2-bedroom apartment off Camp Creek Parkway, and every other weekend I'd sit on his couch eating Popeyes and watching him fall asleep in front of the TV, exhausted from working double shifts at the Postal Service to keep child support current. My mother remarried Robert Wallace when I was 14, a real estate developer with a Buckhead townhouse and a laugh that filled a room. Kayla was born the following year. I remember the exact moment things shifted. I was 16, and my mother told me, "Robert's building us a real family now, Christina. Try not to make things complicated." Complicated. That's the word she used for me for the next 13 years. I put myself through Georgia State working nights at a call center. My father came to my graduation alone, wearing his one good suit, crying harder than I did. My mother sent a card, no visit. Still, I called my father every Sunday. Still, when he mentioned his 60th birthday party 3 weeks ago, voice full of hope, I bought a $340 flight home from Charlotte and cleared my schedule. I didn't know then that my mother had spent those same 3 weeks trying to make sure I never walked through that ballroom door. My phone buzzed 40 minutes after I left the venue, mascara dried in tracks down my face, still sitting in that parking garage because I couldn't stop shaking enough to drive. It was my father. "Jazzy," his voice was hoarse, like he'd been arguing. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I didn't know I need you to know I didn't know." "Dad, it's fine." "It's not fine." A long pause. Muffled voices behind him, my mother's voice, sharp, then Robert's, lower, warning. "Come to the house tomorrow, not the party, the house. 10 a.m., there's something I have to tell you, and your mother cannot know I'm telling you." He hung up before I could ask what. I didn't sleep that night. I replayed the dinner over and over, the way Kayla smirked, the way Robert moved like he'd rehearsed grabbing security, the way my mother's eyes darted to my father before she raised her voice, like she was making sure he heard every word. That's what stuck with me. She wasn't just embarrassed by me, she was performing for him. At 9:52 the next morning, I pulled into my father's driveway. Not the Buckhead townhouse, but a modest brick ranch in East Point that I hadn't known existed. My mother's silver Range Rover wasn't there. My father answered the door in a robe, looking older in daylight, a manila folder already in his hand. "Sit down," he said. "There's a lot you don't know about your mother, and about this family, and once I tell you, there's no going back to before you knew it." I sat. "I've been sick for 8 months, Christina," he said. "Stage 3 pancreatic cancer, and your mother has known the entire time." I couldn't speak. The words pancreatic cancer sat in the air between us like smoke. "Why didn't you tell me?" I finally managed. "Because every time I said your name, Karen found a way to talk me out of calling you." He opened the folder with hands that shook worse than they had the night before. "She said you'd only come around for money. She said you resented me for the divorce." None of that was true, was it? No, Daddy, it was never true. He slid a document across the coffee table. It was a will, dated 4 months earlier, drawn up by a firm called Whitfield and Moss. "I updated this after my diagnosis," he said. "Everything, the East Point house, my pension, the life insurance, 40% of my share in the Postal Contractors Union Investment Fund, all of it goes to you. Not because I'm punishing Kayla, she's my daughter too, but because Karen has spent 13 years trying to convince this family you don't exist, and I let her, because I was a coward, and I am done being a coward." My hands trembled, taking the papers. "Does Mom know about this will?" "No. She thinks the old one still stands, the one that splits everything 3 ways between her, Kayla, and a trust she controls until Kayla turns 25. He looked at me, eyes wet. "Christina, last night wasn't really about you being uninvited. Robert's development company is in trouble, badly in trouble. I found wire transfers from my accounts to his LLC, nearly $180,000 over the last year. Your mother has been helping him move my money before I die, and she needed you gone before you noticed anything." The floor tilted under me. "She's stealing from you," I whispered, "while you're dying." "I need your help proving it," he said, "before it's too late." I spent the next 2 weeks living a double life, showing up to my warehouse job in Marietta by day, and by night, sitting at my father's kitchen table poring over bank statements with a forensic accountant named Jason Boyd, a friend of my father's from his postal union days, who now ran his own small firm off Cascade Road. "Look here," Jason said, tapping a highlighted line on the 3rd night. 6 transfers, $30,000 each, routed through something called Wallace Premier Holdings. That's Robert's company. Started right after your father's diagnosis in November." "That's not a coincidence," I said. "No, ma'am, it is not." We found more. Robert's development project, 12 townhomes near East Point, had stalled after a contractor lawsuit in the spring. Permits froze. Investors pulled out. He was $400,000 underwater and sinking fast, and my mother, who had power of attorney over some of my father's accounts for convenience since his diagnosis, had been quietly bailing him out with my father's money, my father's actual money, the money meant to become my inheritance the moment he'd stopped trusting my mother to protect it. I called my father with the full report on a Thursday night, sitting in my car outside my apartment, because I still hadn't told anyone else what I was carrying. "I want it in writing before I confront her," I said. "Everything documented, every transfer, every date." "Christina," his voice broke, "I should have protected you from all of this 13 years ago. You're protecting me now, Daddy. That's what matters." But even as I said it, a colder thought crept in, one I hadn't spoken aloud to anyone yet. If my mother needed my father's money that badly, how far would she go to keep controlling it? The answer came 3 days later, and it nearly broke me. Jason called at 7 a.m., his voice tight. "Christina, I need you to come to my office, now." I sat across from him as he slid a document across his desk, a filing pulled from the Fulton County Probate Records portal, dated the day after the birthday dinner. A petition to have my father declared mentally incompetent, filed by Karen Griffin Wallace. "She's trying to get guardianship," Jason said quietly. "If a judge grants this, she gets full control over his finances, his medical decisions, his estate. The new will you told me about becomes irrelevant because she'd have legal authority to override or replace it before he passes." My stomach dropped. She humiliated me at that dinner on purpose, to make it look like Dad's judgment is failing, inviting a daughter she'd say he shouldn't have contact with. She was building her case that night. "There's something else." Jason turned his monitor toward me. The petition references a psychiatric evaluation, dated 2 weeks before the dinner. "Your mother had already started this process before you ever showed up." I thought about Robert's hand on my father's shoulder, guiding him back to his chair that night. I thought about my mother's voice. Your father doesn't know what he's saying half the time anymore. Not embarrassment, not rage. A rehearsed line. Evidence, spoken loud enough for 40 witnesses to remember later in a courtroom. She hadn't just been protecting stolen money. She'd been staging my father's incompetence in front of an audience, and I had walked directly into her performance, wearing a smile and holding a birthday gift. "When's the hearing?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. Jason checked the file. 19 days. I hadn't spoken to my half-sister Kayla in almost 2 years, not since a birthday text she never answered. So when she called me at midnight, 9 days before the guardianship hearing, I almost didn't pick up. "Christina, I need to tell you something, and I need you to not hate me," she said, crying so hard I could barely understand her. I sat up in bed. "Kayla, what's wrong? My mom's been telling me you abandoned this family, that you only wanted Luke's, money. That's why I never reached out. I believed her, Christina. I believed her for years." "What changed?" "I heard her on the phone with Robert tonight. She said..." Kayla's breath hitched. "She said once the guardianship goes through, she's putting Luke in a memory care facility in Alabama. Not because he needs it, because it's 4 hours away, and nobody would visit enough to notice anything. She said, once Christina can't get to him, this problem handles itself." The room went cold around me. "Kayla, I need you to say all of that in a written statement. I need you to talk to my accountant, Jason Boyd. Can you do that?" Long silence. Then, "She's my mother, Christina." "He's our father," I said. "Both of ours, and she's about to bury him alive in a facility 4 hours away so she can keep stealing from him in peace." Kayla was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. "I have bank records too," she finally said. "Robert had me co-sign something last year. I didn't understand what it was. I think I'm part of this whether I meant to be or not." For the first time in 13 years, my sister and I were finally on the same side. The Fulton County probate courtroom smelled like old carpet and cold coffee, and my mother walked in wearing a charcoal Armani suit, looking every bit the concerned, devoted wife she'd spent 19 days rehearsing to become. She saw me sitting beside my father's wheelchair. His chemo had started, and he insisted on being there, and her composure cracked for just a second before she smoothed it back into place. "Your Honor," her attorney began, "Mrs. Griffin Wallace seeks guardianship out of profound concern for her husband's cognitive decline and to shield him from manipulation by estranged family members seeking financial gain." I felt my father's hand tighten around mine. When it was our turn, Jason Boyd walked the judge through 8 months of wire transfers, $180,000 flowing from my father's accounts into Wallace Premier Holdings, during the exact window my mother claimed his judgment had failed. Then he entered the psychiatric evaluation, dated weeks before the incompetence she alleged had supposedly worsened, proving the paperwork predated any real crisis, It was manufactured. Then Kayla stood. My mother's face went white. "Kayla, sit down," she hissed. "No, Mom." Kayla's voice shook but held. "Your Honor, I have a written statement, and I have bank documents showing transfers I co-signed without understanding what they were for." She read the statement aloud. The memory care facility in Alabama. 4 hours from anyone who loved him. My mother's own words. This problem handles itself. The courtroom went dead silent. My father, weak from chemo but sitting straighter than I'd seen him in weeks, looked directly at my mother. 13 years, Karen," he said. 13 years you kept my daughter from me, and I let you. Not anymore." The judge denied the guardianship petition within the hour and ordered a full financial audit. Robert Wallace's development company filed for bankruptcy 6 weeks later. The forensic audit ordered by the court uncovered not just the $180,000 taken from my father, but nearly $95,000 quietly siphoned from a trust set up in Kayla's name, money my mother had access to as trustee and had borrowed without ever intending to return. The Fulton County District Attorney's Office opened an investigation into financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. My mother hired the best defense attorney Robert's remaining credit could buy, but the paper trail Jason had built was airtight. 6-figure transfers, a backdated psychiatric evaluation, a probate filing built entirely on manufactured evidence. She avoided prison through a plea deal, 5 years probation, full restitution, and a permanent injunction preventing her from ever holding power of attorney or guardianship over my father again. The Buckhead townhouse went up for sale within the month. I heard, secondhand, that she and Robert separated shortly after, each blaming the other for the collapse neither could admit they'd built together. Kayla moved into a small apartment near Georgia Tech, finishing her degree on financial aid instead of her mother's dime, and started therapy. Real therapy, she told me, not the kind where you just talk about how everyone else failed you. "I used to think you were the problem in this family," she told me over coffee near campus, 3 months after the hearing. "I didn't understand that you were just the only one who ever told the truth." My father's cancer went into a fragile remission that winter. Not a cure, his oncologist was careful about that word, but time, real time, with both of his daughters finally in the same room, at the same table, for the first time in over a decade. The birthday dinner that broke everything ended up saving what was left of it. It's been 11 months since I stood in that ballroom holding a gift nobody wanted me to give. My father is stable, thin, tired some days, but alive, and laughing more than I've heard him laugh since I was a little girl on his couch eating Popeyes. He moved out of the East Point Ranch and into a smaller place closer to me in Marietta, where I can check on him without driving 4 hours to a facility that was never built for his healing, only for his disappearance. I still work at the warehouse, though Jason has been teaching me the basics of forensic accounting on weekends, and I'm seriously considering going back to school for it. There's something about finding the truth buried in a spreadsheet that feels like justice with a paper trail. Undeniable, unshakable, mine. Kayla and I talk every week now. Real talks, not obligatory holiday texts. She's graduating in the spring, and my father and I already bought tickets. My mother reached out once, in March, a voicemail asking if we could move past all this as a family. I didn't call back, not out of bitterness. I checked myself on that one, sat with it, made sure it wasn't just old hurt talking, but because moving past something requires the person who caused it to actually name what they did. She never has, not once. I think about that ballroom sometimes, the shattered champagne flute, 40 strangers watching my own mother try to erase me in front of a birthday cake with my father's name in gold script. She thought she was writing me out of that family's story. She just didn't know she was writing herself out of it instead. Your support means everything. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe for more amazing stories every week, and comment your favorite part below. I can't wait to read your responses. See you in the next one.